high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we salute our lovely and talented kitchen witches for another job well done with this year's Thanksgiving feast. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the fourth week of November 2023. Dateline Hypocrisy Land, Monday, 20 November. According to the conclusions of a study released this week by Oxfam International, the top 1% of the world's wealthy elites are responsible for more carbon emissions than the bottom 66% of the world's population. But wait, I hear you say, aren't those the same sanctimonious, hectoring assholes who are always lecturing us about how we're going to destroy the world if we don't get rid of our pickup trucks and gas stoves? Why, yes, they are. But in all fairness, nobody ever accused these idiots of being unduly burdened by self-awareness. And besides, we all know what the standard response is from the super rich crowd when somebody points out that they are either one, the world's biggest freaking hypocrites, or two, maybe they don't really believe as fervently in the climate change religion as they would like us to believe they do. That standard response is to say, sure, maybe my yachts and private jets and palatial mansions and fleets of gas-powered automobiles produce more emissions in 5 minutes than the average pickup truck driving gas stove owner does in 235 lifetimes, but it's okay because I pay for all my carbon offsets. Which, of course, is just the 21st century version of a decidedly 14th century mode of thinking, which says my sins do not count because I have bought all the required indulgences from the church and I have a letter of commendation from the Pope to prove it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there really is nothing new under the sun, monster. Dateline Washington, Tuesday, 21 November. White House Press Secretary Baghdad Buckwheat celebrated something called the Transgender Day of Remembrance this week by stating, quote, "Today on Transgender Day of Remembrance, we grieve the 26 transgender Americans who were killed this year. Year after year, we see that these victims are disproportionately Black, women, and women of color. No one should face violence or live in fear or be discriminated against simply for being themselves," end quote. And look, I know Baghdad really likes the word disproportionate. I know she thinks it makes her sound smarter than she is, so she jams it into just about every sentence she can think to jam it into, irrespective of whether it's appropriate or applicable. Like in this case, where her words create the implication that there is somehow a proportionate number of Black women of color transgender deaths that would otherwise be perfectly acceptable. You will notice also the very careful phraseology. 26 transgender Americans who were killed. The implication being, obviously, that these people were all murdered in heinous acts of transphobic violence, except not so much, really, because what happens when you actually dig into the details of those 26 deaths? Well, you've got a guy who was fatally shot by the cops while violently resisting arrest. You got a few others who died in murder-suicides, and yes, they were the murderers. You got some who died from drug ODs, others who got run over by cars while jaywalking at night, and before long, you were all the way down at the bottom of the list, and you're wondering, so where are all the people who got cruelly murdered just because they were transgender? Well, there don't appear to be any. Like, literally not a single one. But hey, never let inconvenient facts get in the way of an important political narrative, because if wokesterism teaches us anything, it's that there is a profound difference between the truth and my truth. And who the hell are we to question Baghdad Buckwheat's truth? She is the very first Black, gay, female, homosexual, lesbian woman of color in the history of White House press secretaries. That means you will take her words uncritically at face value, and you will like it, you filthy bigot. Dateline Brussels, Wednesday, 22 November. In one of the most shockingly delusional statements ever uttered by any world leader, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who still, for my money, owns the greatest real-life comic book villain name in world history, stated with a straight face, in total apparent sincerity, that not one single dime of EU humanitarian aid to Palestine has been misused or repurposed for military or terroristic purposes. In fact, according to an internal audit of EU financial aid to Palestine, quote, controls and existing safeguards in place, which have been significantly strengthened in the past years, work well, end quote, to prevent money from flowing to the Hamas terrorists who have been in control of the Gaza Strip since a coup in 2007. But wait, I hear you say, then who paid for all the tunnels and guns and missiles and bombs and RPGs and paragliders, among other things, that were used to facilitate and execute the massacres and kidnappings of 7 October? Well, unclear, says Ursula. But damn it, all of the EU money only went for food and medicine and nothing else, because Hamas, they gave us their word, and Hamas would never lie. Reached for comment, Hamas spokesman Hassan Youssef said, quote, end quote. Dateline Amsterdam, Thursday, 23 November. In part of what is now a well-established pattern of behavior, the global fake news media reacted to an election win by non-leftists by lighting their own hair on fire, shrieking nonsense noises at the sky, gnashing their teeth, rending their garments, and declaring that this surely portends the impending doom of civil society. Geert Wilders, who's been one of the left's favorite boogeymen for some years now, in addition to having a fatwa on his head for criticizing Islam, there are a lot of reasons to like this guy, in other words, is the leader of the party that won the Dutch elections this week, which places him in line to be that country's next prime minister. And since nobody outside the Netherlands has the faintest idea how their wacky electoral system actually works, we'll have to just leave it at that. But suffice it to say, the mere reality of a Wilders-led party prevailing in a national election has caused all kinds of paroxysms of terror on the part of fake news performance artists across the whole world. And here is just a brief sampling. Quote, "This is not good for democracy," said one sober, dispassionate, totally unbiased journalist, apparently unaware that democracy sometimes means your guy doesn't win. Quote, "This is our 9/11, shrieked another. Quote, "It's a dark dawn. This is a threat to our society," bellowed a third, because this is all it takes to be branded a dangerous radical right-wing lunatic nowadays, saying crazy things like, "We would like to preserve our own native culture," or "Maybe we should be the ones to decide how many people emigrate into our country and who they are." Reached for comment, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said, quote, "I'll get you, Geert Wilders, and your little dog too," end quote. Dateline Hollywood, Friday, 24 November. Terminally unfunny comedian and certified crazy person Kathy Griffin stated in an interview with Vulture this week, whatever the hell Vulture is, that she safeguards her mental health by making animal noises during yoga sessions. I say again, she safeguards her mental health by making animal noises during yoga sessions. Specifically, she meows like a cat and moos like a cow. Quote, and this is an honest to God quote, folks. I did not make this up. "It's when I get on all fours like a kitty cat and then I arch my back and I am instructed by my teacher to say the word meow. I feel like a fucking fool, but I do it. And then I unarch my back and wait for it. I moo like a cow. PTSD is a bitch, and when I get PTSD attacks, I can't stop vomiting. So if I have to meow like a kitty cat and moo like a cow, I'm gonna fucking do it," end quote. Now, as you may recall, Griffin's mental health crisis began when she voluntarily posed with the fake severed head of President Donald Trump and then was shocked, I say, when she was dropped by her employers and investigated by the Secret Service. Because what the hell kind of monstrous misogynist country do we live in where a female public figure can't pose with the president's severed head and be safe from any professional or legal recriminations whatsoever? So then, following the standard script from maniac leftists who do indefensibly stupid things, she, of course, painted herself as the victim. Because of course she did. She sang all the standards, all the greatest hits like, "I'm getting death threats," and "I have PTSD," and "These Trumper MAGA assholes have ruined my whole career and taken my life away." Reached for comment, Morris the cat said, quote, "On behalf of the entire feline community, we want nothing to do with Kathy Griffin," end quote. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is this week's Decline of Western Civilization News Roundup. I hope it was as good for you as it was for me. And if it was, do feel free to join me for a post-coital cigarette after the show. Now pour yourself a nice tall glass of potato vodka, because we're going in deep, hard, and Polish tonight. And with that, I send it over to my lovely and distinguished colleague, your friend and mine, the one and only Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.